Episode 6. There is only one reason we have homeless people. One, it's not mental illness. It's not drug abuse. She spoke like a sermon, a war cry wrapped in compassion. It's regulation. Mrs. Janet Hale yelled over the crowd, who erupted in boos and jeers as the well-manicured woman reached for her bottle of water to sip, pausing to let them. We, as a society, have said if a house isn't this size, this material, has these features, and therefore costs this much, then it doesn't count as a home. People aren't homeless because they don't want one, she said. They are homeless because our laws set a minimum for how we think other humans ought to live, how profitable we think they should be to someone else, which is saying to our poor, if you can't meet a minimum payment, you can't have one at all. We can't, in good conscience, keep these standards when 4,000 people are homeless on the streets of New Mexico. Do you know what I see when I look at the tent cities that they set up under the overpasses and in the parks? She said. I see people trying to make a home. And I'll tell you, if we let them, they'd be building homes. They'd be screwing together wood and metal and building themselves a life. She paused again, this time for cheers. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. She yelled, growing in enthusiasm with each line. It's not pursuit of happiness only if you're sober. It's not pursuit of happiness only if you're sane. America was built by men who used their bare hands to build a home and a life for himself. Men who felled their own trees and gathered their own resources to make something for themselves. The very essence of the pursuit of happiness is in a man's ability to make his home. Who are you to say how he does this? More cheers erupted as she nodded, smiled, and waved at people in the crowd. Do you know why all our social programs don't work? She continued. Because they would rather live in a tent under the bridge than play by your rules. And what do we get for all our social progressiveness? More homeless and more taxes, she yelled over the crowd. Denver sees all our progressive programs, so what do they do for their homeless? Send them here. They offer any homeless person who ends up in their courts a bus ticket here. They tell them the winters here in Albuquerque aren't so cold and a person won't freeze to death. The crowd booed. What does Phoenix do? She continued. Phoenix tells their homeless our summers aren't as hot. A person can survive here in the summer, and they send them our way. Enough is enough, Mrs. Hale exclaimed, putting her hands out to the crowd as it erupted in a cheer. Enough is enough. It's time we seek solutions, not Band-Aids. It's time to deregulate. If I'm elected governor, the first thing I will do is give the homeless the ability to pursue happiness. With that, she proposed a large, mostly barren chunk of land to the west of the city to be deregulated. Using state and lended tribal land, it would start outside of the city limits and extend into the mesa for several miles in each direction. This land would have no running water, no electricity, no paved roads, no police or fire. It would be a large swath of land outside of government control and government funding. A place where those who want to can set up a tent and build a life around it. A place where citizens aren't required to pay taxes they can't afford and, in turn, do not receive the services government programs provide. It would be the Wild West all over again, a new opportunity for tens of thousands. Episode 7. Under the Tarps. I wiped the travel of the day off my body with a wet cloth and then set about tidying things up. I set out my solar panels to charge my phone and lanterns, then began organizing the new items. Aside from the tarps that span from one side of the fence to the other, I have a really big sun umbrella that I keep open between the two. Only about a quarter of my yard was exposed to the sun. I have 2 rain barrels and several cinder blocks that I use for seating or to weigh things down. The ground is hard, and I pride myself on keeping it flat and clean. I don't even wear shoes most of the time. It gives me a feeling of normalcy with so much chaos outside the fence. I have been collecting cans to cover my chain link fence to make it more private. I pulled a cinder block up to the pile of cans and took a chopstick out of my hair so I could prod the inside of the damaged cans to get the dents out. After a while, Darcy stopped by, a small native woman with a round-tipped nose. Darcy is a timid one, and through the fence she seemed scared to disturb me. I looked up, nodded, then went inside and grabbed her hygienic needs out of the pile. She is fairly new here and asked for tampons. I convinced her to try the cups instead, mainly because you only need one for like ever. In trade, she handed me the red tablecloth she had described. It wasn't nice, but it was exactly what my little tables needed to hide the things underneath. That dusty gray-blue color had been growing more and more depressing. I went inside and laid it out. It actually looked nicer than I thought it would. It made the space seem less cluttered. Ray returned. He looked as though he'd cleaned himself up too, though when wet, his long hair looked even dirtier. Ray is older than I am by about 12 years. He reminds me a bit of Skeletor, both taller and thinner than most people. He has thin lips and a large nose with dark eyes. He is generally pretty quiet, but he has a sweet goofiness that comes out when he's comfortable and one-on-one. But there weren't many people he was comfortable around. He dropped some wood and a bin of trash by the fire pit in the center circle. Then he pushed open my fence and propped it so it wouldn't shut. The little jingle bells I had hanging on it rang as he did. He took my trash, and I took that as a cue to pull out my pot. It had been soaking beans since the night before. I set it by the fence and went back to my cans. Ray worked on starting dinner. "There was a fire this morning," he shouted over his shoulder. "A few roads down, they lost their blankets and clothes." He turned to me with an ironic smile. "Lucky for everyone here, we're the mud people." With a flare of his arm, he added, "We don't have to worry about fire like those peasants to the north." He finished by working his eyebrow with a smile that might have been charming if it wasn't paired with such flagrant dorkiness. I shook my head with a smile that he took as approval, but he was being absolutely ridiculous. But I had to admit, there was some smug comfort in knowing we didn't burn so easily. I kept working at my cans. Ray set the pot on the rack in the fire and ran back to his homestead to grab his big spoon. I finished the last can and stepped back to look at my work, hands on hips. "Hey there, girlie, I heard you just now." I turned only the top half of my body and saw Dave, my neighbor, smiling with a wave. I looked at him with a squint, trying to remember what he wanted, then went inside and resurfaced with a newish baseball cap, a tube of black acrylic paint, and some cans of beef stew. In trade, he handed me $20, which I stuffed into my pocket. Since I found the cap in a dumpster, it was $11 profit. I returned to looking at my cans, contemplating my options. I was going to need a lot more of them. I sat dejected on the ground for a few minutes. More traders came and left. Ray seemed happy with his beans. I asked him if it was ready for some rice. He paused, considering it. "No, not yet," he replied without looking up. I watched him pick the dirt from his fingernails with his teeth, staring into the murky pot. I was restless. The only time I drink coffee is when we go to town, and I always regret it. More trades came. Jackson requested some packs of ramen noodles, nudes, he called them. He also got some deodorant, a pack of socks, and a t-shirt. I found him one in a back bin at a thrift store. It had a small bleach stain on the sleeve and featured the logo for a local bank on the chest. For this, he traded me $5, a 5-gallon bucket, and channel lock pliers. Ray had left again around the corner and returned with his folding chair. Whether or not he admitted it, it was time for that rice. I filled a large bowl and brought it to the center. I looked at him defiantly and gestured as if I were going to dump it in. He returned a goofy, guarded look as if to say, "Don't you dare," raising his eyebrows in a joking scowl. I fired back a wide-eyed look that assured him I was indeed going to do it. His eyes grew big with feigned horror as he lifted his chin up to the sky. I dumped it in, as well as a can of mixed vegetables and a beef bouillon cube. It wouldn't add much flavor, but it added a smell to each bite.